Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Cali, Colombia, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Cali, Colombia. Welcome to Q&A Day. And if you're listening to this on Facebook, welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Basically, this is a study of the sacred yoga literature of India. The author of all the Vedas, Vyasadeva, compiled them all. This was his, what do you call the magnum opus, Kaustubha? Is that the word? Magnum. This was the cream of the.
Honestly, I'm not sure exactly what that term means, but it probably applies. Yeah.
Right? What do you, Mara? Mara says yes. Mara, you can get a chair and get in here. Mara's just standing in the corner, like whimpering. Get over here, Mara. Come on. We share. And anyway, the work is talking about, look, the highest part of the yoga system is not mystic powers. It's not health. It's not, detoxing. It's not, mysticism. It is love. It's pure love. It's connecting the soul with the source. So when they say that bhakti is the topmost yoga system, it's not a fanatical thing to say, because this is our particular thin lineage. This is what the lineages of traditions go back for thousands of years. It's all what were we saying yesterday? You said this beautifully yesterday. Those South Indian alwars and preach to me like you were preaching to me yesterday.
Oh, what were we talking about? Oh, because
about that bogus
do we want to
guys.
get into the origin of the whole
No,
conversation?
we don't get the origin of the word, but you could say the origin.
Someone might say, "Hey, why are you saying bhakti is like higher than other things? There's so many different paths; they all lead to the same place, et cetera, et cetera." And what our answer would be is, no. And you, Hare Krishna's got some kind of weird way of doing it that nobody else has ever looked at it that way before. No, people have seen it this way for millennia. Going back to Ramanuja 1,000 years ago, the Alwars going back many more centuries than him, is that divine love is the entire purpose of life, and all of the Vedic literatures are leading there. Some indirectly and some directly, and the indirect paths like karma and jnana, their value is in that they ultimately, if they're leading you towards divine love, then they're valuable. If they're not, if they're stunting that in some way, then they're less valuable.
They're diversions.
They're diversions in that sense. So all of this literature is meant to lead us to this place of divine love. Divine love is our purpose. Divine love is what we're made of. Divine love is what we're made for. And that's what Bhagavatam presents very directly.
It's not a newfound thing. Divine love is eternal, right? And the Vedas are eternal. But because there's so many different types of people, they need different types. Just like if you have like 7 children, you're going to give different children different instructions, because some just can't follow the rules. You got to give some concessions for different people. So you'll see Vedic teachings all are meant to raise the consciousness, but you give concessions towards different people. But ultimately, what's higher than love? What's higher than the soul connecting with the divine? And here we are, and it's Q&A day, and people write in their questions. And during the entire week, people are on Facebook. We need a name for Facebook people. I guess we could just call them Facebookers. Bookers sounds more like boogers, but Facebook.
A bookie.
You call them Facebookers.
Facebookies.
Facebookies. Okay, Facebookies. So if you want to listen, you can You can binge listen to this on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get podcasts. So we're going to dive into Q&A day right away.
All right.
Because we do this in less than an hour every day. And it's good to just check in. And the first question is from Deva Jackson. And by the way, if you want to write in a question, you can. We read them. We read them all. Not all of them, but most of them. You send them to Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. David Jackson via Discord thread. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My skeptical Christian dad, I had one of those too. My skeptical Christian dad saw my picture of Krishna and Radha and asked me, who are they?
In a skeptical tone?
In a skeptical tone. I tried to simplify it. I said that Krishna is God, and I don't really know what to say about Radha. I tried. I said, well, there's two sides, the divine masculine and divine feminine. He cut me off right there because even that was too much for him. I know how he doesn't get those words. I don't think that is even an accurate statement anyway. Can you please help? How should I explain Radha to a non-devotee? Isn't that a good question?
It's a very good question. Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, what I appreciate about what Dave is doing here is he's getting it. Like, there's no point in just throwing out explanations that someone can't process.
Right.
Right. So, okay, there's the divine feminine, there's the divine masculine, and stop. I can't even handle it.
Stop. All right, I've heard enough. You crazy cult member. So I've lost my daughter to the cult.
Yeah. So we have to try to find the words that someone can make some sense of, and we have to try to bring someone as far along as they're able to be brought and not try any farther. Otherwise, you blow everything. But I think first we have to discuss who Radha is, how we need to understand Radha, not to a skeptic or not to someone, in a broader way, and then try to understand how to convey that in a more concise way, right? And so it's such a fascinating, I was kind of preparing for this question.
Tell.
Well, I'll tell you, Raghunath, and I think it's something that we were even talking about. Oh yeah, the other day when we said, this book is alive, we're like, you read these texts, the real stuff. You read Bhagavad Gita, you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and this morning I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's a fact that even beyond, in one sense, you could say any book you could read it a second time and it says more, and you can read it a third time and you get more out of it. But not like this. Where it's like you can read these for decades and decades and decades, and at certain points you read and you're like, I was just on the surface, just entirely on the surface, and now I'm understanding so much more, and I realize there's still so much more there that I'm not even getting at.
Yeah, it has a way to blossom, and any flower, it starts off beautiful in a bud. And bud is very beautiful, and then as it sprouts, it becomes more beautiful, and it blossoms, it becomes more sensual. The fragrance comes out, and these books are it's not just, we said yesterday in class, it's not just like my summer reading list. Finish the Bhagavad Gita. No, there's no summer reading list. It's not like Catcher in the Rye. This thing goes on forever. It always is unfolding at all stages of your life. Even these Puranic stories, the Mahabharata or the Srimad Bhagavatam, these stories, they are just comic books for a child. And then they become incredibly meaningful at every phase of life. They start to blossom more and more. So we are in a great place, surrounded by great people and great literature. And okay, all right, I'm ready.
It's not a summer reading list. It's more like your daily therapist, right?
It's like a therapist on a regular basis, and it talks to you.
It's alive.
It's alive.
Oh, hey, we never revealed what that was. We had that cliffhanger, and I never revealed what it was. I was talking about Pragosh. Remember that?
Are you squirreling? Are you squirreling out of here? If you're new to the show, squirrel is when you take it off like a dog chases a squirrel and takes you right off the path. Kaustubha, are you about to squirrel us from the main thing? The
squirrel is running along the path in this.
Okay,
case,
all right. Let's hear.
And he said he was with Srila Prabhupada once, and they had that Krishna book, which is Prabhupada telling in a story form the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was in those original pressings that they were real large. It was in 3 volumes, silver cover, really cool looking book, And I have one volume of that, by the way. One of those original or early
Original
printings
ones?
of it.
That's very
Yeah,
cool.
I don't know if it was the first printing, but it was definitely the big silver ones. And what Prabhupada said was, you're looking at this book, this Krishna book, and he said, how exactly did he phrase it? He said, you think this is a book about Krishna, but that's not what it is. He said, this book is Krishna looking like a book. He said it like that. It is Krishna looking like a book.
That's
And that's something from a material perspective we can't understand, but from a spiritual perspective makes complete sense, is that this is a manifestation of Krishna. It's his energy. It is him, right? And these books will speak to us, in different ways at different times, according to our sincerity and our eagerness to understand in them. They will bless us in different ways. So I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita today, and if you really want to understand about Srimati Radharani, the chapter I would point someone at is the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 4. Such a beautiful chapter, and it's a chapter, the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj, is writing a biography of Sri Chaitanya, who is Krishna coming in the mood of Radha. So if you want to understand Chaitanya, you have to understand Radha. And so there's a whole chapter that's describing who Radha is. There's more than one, actually, in that Adi Lila. So I was reading these verses and I was reading these purports, and just, sometimes the phrases, you read them and you don't understand what they mean. And then they start to click, 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 and then everything starts to tie together. And that was happening for me this morning, And so now let's talk about who Radha is and what I was reading this morning. And it's said that Krishna has his internal energy and his external energy. And the internal energy is the spiritual energy that is his form. His form is made of this energy. And then there's the external energy, which is the energy of illusion, which doesn't exist within him, but is his energy existing without. And that internal energy can be divided into 3. Do you know those terms, Raghunath? Put you on the hot seat.
Ladina Shakti.
Yeah.
Ataranga Shakti.
Well, Antaranga refers to all 3.
Oh.
That means the internal.
Ladini Shakti.
The next 2 start with S. Samvit.
Bit and some
Sandini.
Sandini. Sambit. That's
Sandini.
Sandini's Italian, right?
Sandini.
Sandini. Hey, Sandini.
Yeah, it's a Sandini energy. The
Sandini Shakti.
So I'm not going to get too into it. It's such an incredible subject to understand, and when you go into understand these potencies, it's really the doorway into understanding more about what's going on. But among those energies, one of them is called the Sandini, means the energy of it's his eternal. It all relates to Satchidananda, the eternality or existence. And the Sandini energy is the energy that manifests and maintains the spiritual realm. And then the Samvit energy is the energy of knowing. And the Hladini energy is the energy of, they commonly called the pleasure-giving potency, but we can understand that it's the energy of love, right? Because love is what gives pleasure. Love is service, and service is to give pleasure. And the mood of love is I want to please another. And so of those 3 energies, let's talk about the last 2. One is the Samvit potency. And there's a text Adi Lila 467, and it reads like this: the essence of the Samvit potency, of knowing, the essence of knowing is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. All other kinds of knowledge, such as the knowledge of Brahman, the impersonal energy, are its components. Now, that's a very profound statement. But in a sense, what it's saying is the essence of all knowing is to know who Krishna is, that he's the root of all existence, that I am his energy, that everyone is his energy, that he is everywhere. If you understand that, everything else that there is to understand is understood in relation to that. It's a component of knowing him. Okay? That means everything is revealed through this potency, but then Prabhupada writes this in the commentary, and this is really important. He says, when the Samvit factor of cognition, of knowing, is enlightened by the Hladini potency, right? then these two energies work together, and thus one can attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead. The Samvit Shakti should be maintained in this state. And I just want to try to explain what that means. The Ladini, who is Radha? It is said that Radha is the personification of the Ladini potency. Her entire embodiment is divine love. Her entire energy is the energy of service and love, directed at Krishna. And it's said that when we're blessed, we have this. The Samvit energy is the energy that reveals who is God and what is everything. How do I understand everything? And it said that when our ability to know is blessed by the mood of devotion, by the Ladini Shakti, then we can actually understand everything. Then those two energies work together, and we can understand, who am I, what is this world, what is my purpose, and all of that. And we can actually attain the deepest states of love of God. So Radha, so if that's the fact, then the fact is that the key to our eternal, enlightened happiness lies in understanding and developing this mood of loving service, the Hladini Shakti. You know, the mood, I love you, I want to serve you, I want to please you. Radha is the embodiment of that mood in the highest degree. It's called Mahabhava, right? It's the deepest divine love. And she's also the medium for the transmission of that mood from us. If we can be blessed by her and feel that mood, then we communicate that devotion to Krishna through Radha. So everything is revealed through the service attitude. Sri Radha is the complete embodiment of that service attitude, and she's the medium for the transmission of that loving service. If we can understand that, if we can, and I know that sounds, it can start to click the more you think about it, the more you know, that just this idea, everything is revealed through the service attitude. When we don't want to serve, when we want to be the center and be served, everything becomes clouded. By the blessings of Radha, we can develop this mood, I want to serve like you do, Radha. I want to serve selflessly. I want to love and serve the root of all existence, and through the root of all existence, everyone. And so therefore, we, all the devotees of Krishna, seek the blessings of Radha, right? Because it's through her potency that we serve. It's through her, and also through her potency that we understand. So that is Radha. I don't think that name was Deva. Was it Deva?
Deva.
Deva Jackson. I don't know if Deva's father's ready to sit down and discuss that, you know. So I think maybe a simpler way of saying something like that, in a very simple way, is something like Radha is the embodiment of divine love, right? It's like, or the personification of divine love. Love for God, she is the personification of that. It's maybe something like that. I don't know. How would you say it, Raghu?
I wouldn't say all that, but I guess you're explaining to our people who are a little bit more in the know.
My point is, what are we trying to compress?
I liked what you first said. We were like, okay, I'm dealing with my father who's a hardcore Christian. I would just say, that's God, and that's his devotee. Just like sort of like the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. I try to relate to them wherever they're at. But most people nowadays who've sort of rejected religion that they grew up with, I'd be like, that's the male and female energy of God. I'd keep it real simple. That God is male, masculine, and feminine.
But he shot that down. Yeah, he shot that down.
Well, he shot that down because he's a Christian. He doesn't want to hear that there's a female God, a goddess. Mm-hmm. So I think that you got to just understand who you're talking to. I would never go to goddess with a Christian dad. I would go to, I would just say, yeah, that's God. That's a great devotee of God. You know, truthfully, I'd probably go, that's Mother Mary. It's like Mother Mary. It's like Mother, depending. Like my mom would go, okay, Mother Mary, sure.
Yeah, he might not be ready to handle that's God. But yeah.
Some people will ask questions, but they actually don't want to know.
Right.
You know what I mean? They just don't want to know. They just want to see how crazy you're going to sound.
Sometimes you have to just say right there, like just like stop them up and say, do you really want to know? Because that's going to require sitting down and really having an open conversation. Anyway, whatever. It's like,
most people want to tell time, but they don't want to take apart a clock. In the Vedas, we tell time. We also dissect the entire clock. And, you go through the entire thing, each gear and each little moving part. It's like detailed. And this detail, if you want the answer, it's there. But some people just like, just tell me. I think I just want to know what time it is.
Yeah.
You started telling that whole long story. My mind was like, woo.
Oh, but it's so
It's very-
important, Raghunath.
It is important, and I'm going to get to it. But
When are you going? Or when are you going to get to it?
maybe on my deathbed. Maybe on my deathbed.
But as I was reading this, I was just thinking. In other words, again, and I'll try to say it in even more concise. By one of Krishna's energies, we're given the blessings to know or to understand, and by another of his energies is the blessing to experience divine love and the feeling I want to serve. When the ability to know becomes blessed, how did Prabhupada phrase it? He said, when it becomes, let me pull it up. He said, is enlightened. When our ability to know is enlightened by the mood of divine service, of divine love, then we can actually really know. Then everything becomes revealed. And he says the Samvit Shakti, the knowledge Shakti, should be maintained in this state. Our knowing faculty should be maintained through our devotional faculty. It's a huge clue to all existence right there, that ultimately truth is revealed through devotion. If we're not experiencing devotion, if we're not holding devotion in our heart, we will not understand who we are, what this world is. We won't get
True.
it.
I mean, it's one of these things you can understand the micro and the macro. So if I want to understand Mara to the degree that I'm devoted to Mara, or vice versa, we start to reveal ourselves to that person. If you have a lover, a spouse, the more vulnerable you can be with the person, or when you trust a person, then you can become more vulnerable and you can reveal more. So Krishna is the same way. As we become vulnerable and shed the ego, shed the bravado, shed the persona that I put on publicly and can be really genuine, then all of a sudden Krishna starts to reveal through revelation our relationship. And it's just like within two lovers of this world. We have to be able to trust the person first. And so a big part of our approach to God is becoming real, becoming genuine, becoming authentic, becoming sincere. And then all of a sudden we develop deeper and deeper realizations. All right. Hey, by the way, I got to give a happy birthday shout out today. It's Bhakti-yogi from Croatia, who's a dedicated other. That means we never see him live here on Zoom, but he's out there listening every day. Bhakti-yogi from Croatia. Love you, brother.
Vedran? Dr. Vedran.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy birthday, Bhakti-yogi.
Happy birthday, Bhakti-yogi. Okay.
So I got a question for you, Raghu.
Sure.
This is coming from Konar.
Konar.
Via email. Konar asks, hello, I'm an other and have been listening for about a year now. My question is a practical matter. All right?
Ready.
How do you decide what clothes and shoes to wear? I have
Bunky pick them out for me. Okay. Bunky, what am I going to wear today? A bow. He said a bow. I can't even put a bow in my hair. I put it in my head.
He says, how do you decide what clothes and shoes to wear? But as we see, it's not like a fashion question in the sense of like what looks nice, but like this is an ethical question.
Okay, Bunky.
I've been altering my life to cause as little harm and cruelty to the world as I can manage. Okay, trying to minimize the cruelty in the world. I have a growing family on a limited income. I have found several great options for clothing made with humanely and organic materials, made in places with great working conditions for the employees, but they always have a very high price tag. With the size of my family, this would make my clothing bill far too high to be reasonable.
I'm dying to figure out how many kids he's got.
I simply can't afford to source all my family's clothing from places like this, but I don't want to continue the contribution of someone suffering for our convenience. Please help, Raghunath.
I can help you, my friend. Good question. First, I think the main thing is we got to keep the main thing. And the main thing is we are trying to connect to our source. We're connected to our higher power. There should be regular kirtan in the house. And there should be food cooked with love and devotion and offered to Krishna and distributed to the kids. This is the main thing. This is like sort of suppose you have suppose you have 50 rocks and you got some big rocks and some pebbles and then you got some sand. You know, they say if you put them all like in a glass jar, you put the big rocks in first, right? Because if you put the other stuff in first, you can never fit the big rocks in. So you put the big rocks in first, and then you put the smaller, and you get gradually smaller, and eventually the sand. Then it all fits in. If we keep the main thing, put Krishna first, all the other things will work itself out. That being said, he might be saying, hey, you know, I already do that. We already keep Krishna at the center of our household. With Krishna at the center, it'll all work itself out. But if you feel like you already do that, there's just some simple answers. And I'm going to give you right from Grandma Terry, my mom. Okay. I never got a new piece of clothing until I bought it, practically speaking. Everything I wore was either hand-me-downs or Salvation Army. Matter of fact,
that's because you had a big family, you know.
We had 7 kids in our family. My father was a school teacher. My mother was a homemaker, and she was a secretary. But you know, I couldn't afford the nice clothes that all the rich kids had, and so you know, by the time Salvation Army became cool when I was in 9th grade, that's when me and all my cool punk friends started going. It was really embarrassing because I went in there and all the old ladies were like, "Hey, it's Ray. Ray's here." I was like, and all my friends were like, "How do you know all these people in Salvation Army?" And I was like, "Oh, they're friends of my mom." But really, I was going there my whole life. So, you know, you just got to, I think there's something cool about just wearing, even making a vow, I'll only buy clothes that were already used. And sometimes you find great things that are used for cheap, for dirt cheap at Salvation Army. Now, some devotees don't like to wear secondhand clothes. They say you get the karma. But you know what? But some devotees do also. There's great souls who will only wear, I think even our acharyas would wear cloth that was thrown to the wayside.
But I think the question has more to do with the ethical end of it rather than the economical end of it.
Well, what's more ethical than wearing discarded clothing?
All right.
Right? For example, if there was a leather belt and it was killed in a wrong way, now why waste that? Why waste that? Some people may disagree, but I'm saying it's already been used and done with. Wear an old one. That's what I would say.
All right. Is your clothing used?
Is my clothing used? No. This Bunky just bought me this shirt. No, I'm just saying this is a issue he's dealing with, and he wants to live in an ethical way. That's one way to do it. You know.
All right.
Otherwise, you're just gonna, if you want to, don't spend any money. You're gonna get it from China. There's probably little children making it. You know, because there's no minimum wages in some of these countries, and I like the way he's thinking. But I would just wear used things. What would you do?
Well, you know, I think it's, you know, what he said, I think, was right on. You're trying to minimize the suffering that you're causing in this world, and how detailed.
He said, or what I said.
He said, right.
Right.
That's what he said in his. I'll read it again. He said, "I have been altering my life to cause. I've been altering my life to cause as little harm and cruelty to the world as I can manage." You know, and I think that's, you know, a good way of phrasing it. In other words, you know, you may say, you know what, I'm not going to wear leather because, you know, that's, you know, involves the death of, you know, a cow in most cases. And then you can say, okay, but what about the glue that's holding the canvas to the rubber, you know? And then what about the conditions under which it was made and so on? We live in a very bizarre world where we're buying things that are made on the other side of the world because there's more economical, you know, because it was more cost effective and so on. We live in a very bizarre world. And so it's hard, even if we didn't, it's challenging to minimize, you know, suffering. So I liked what your point was. The fact is we need to make the main thing. Let me use all my energy in service, you know, and let me not become like too nitpicky, particularly about what other people do, you know.
Right.
And let me try to use my energy and let me dedicate my life in a positive way. If I'm doing that, in one sense, I'm doing the right thing. And then, you know, then you minimize it as far as you can afford. Like, you know, I'm trying to minimize it, but this is getting too expensive for me. well, if that's the case, then do what you need to do, you know. That's okay, you know. And if you can find it economically, you can find new ways to make it happen. The effort is appreciated, and there's a sincerity to that, and there's a purity in that. But let's not like immobilize ourselves because we're entirely bent on doing this when we're never going to achieve this entirely ahimsa kind of level at any point. So the most important thing is, you know, keep the main thing the main thing. Give your life to serve God, to serve others. And you can decide that, Konar. You know, you can decide when this is just too expensive or when it's not. Or you could go to the Salvation Army.
Lucinda Ray says, wearing hand-me-downs and secondhand or upcycled clothing has been my goal for the last 5 years. Yeah, I like that too.
All right.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing it, Raghu? With the dead air, I thought you'd have some snappy answer.
It's like, he's calling me
Maybe
out.
I should do it.
Maybe I should do it. I can make a commitment to do that. I don't know. I sort of dress like a dirtbag anyway. I'm trying to sort of like look a little more presentable. Right, Mara? You think I'm a little dirtbaggy looking? No. You just say nice things.
Okay.
All right. Alrighty. You know, people send me clothes, you know, for some reason, and I just wear them.
Well, if they send you leather, you going to wear it?
Maybe.
Really?
If they send it to me. It's
You
already
would.
been purchased.
Somehow
What,
I
is it better to give it away?
Well, it's also a statement, right? It's a kind of in a sense, it's a statement that I you know, kind of endorse the
it?
wearing of leather. Yeah.
Or
Anyway.
it's a statement, I endorse wearing a gift.
Okay.
I don't know. No one sent me leather, by the way.
Okay.
No one's sending me like leather purses or leather coats. I haven't got one sent yet, have I, Mara? No, not that she's aware of. Okay, Lee from North Carolina. Let's see if you can stump Raghunath. No, this is a question. It's for Kaustubha. Dear Holy Trinity. Okay, that's cute. Mara's the mother of God. Father, Son. You're the Father. I guess I'm the Son. You're the Holy Ghost, Mara. Hear this. The Holy Ghost. What the heck is the Holy Ghost? What is that?
Let's not rabbit here, you know, let's squirrel here.
Squirrel?
Yeah. Read the question.
But do you know what the Holy Ghost is?
Why don't we read this question?
I'm curious about the ghost. Why call it a ghost? That's a little dark. Dear Holy Trinity, I have a question. There is a phrase that I have come across often in Bhakti literature that I haven't been able to understand. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. It is mentioned in chapter 12, verse 6 and 7 of the Gita. Krishna is explaining to Arjuna what is the most perfect kind of yoga. And he says, those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, for them, I'm the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. The part I want to ask about is giving up all their activities unto me. What is meant by all their activities? I suppose everything we do could be considered an activity, from blinking to fighting against our loved ones in the battle of Kurukshetra. Should all their activities be interpreted literally? And what does it mean to give them up to Krishna? Thank you for considering my question. Your avid listener and well-wisher, Lee from North Carolina.
I think Lee's with us today, right?
Yes, he's a Zoomer. Okay. If you want to be a Zoomer, you can. Email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Kaustubha, enlighten us.
Well, I don't know if I'll enlighten, but I'll try to answer the question. So, he's speaking about a really great part of the Bhagavad Gita, right? The beginning of the 12th chapter. And there's a really just fascinating explanation about how one can practice bhakti, or how one can practice progressing in spiritual life. But it begins with a question from Arjuna. Arjuna basically asks, well, I'll read it. He says, which are considered to be more perfect? Arjuna is asking Krishna. Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest? So some people say, I want to serve God, the person God, and they focus on that. And other people conceive of God as impersonal, and they do an impersonal type of meditation. So that was his fundamental question, and Krishna answers it unequivocally, right? In that verse, there's two verses that Raghunath just read. He says in text 5, those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme for them, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. And then he says, okay, but then there's another way where you can begin to focus on me as a person, and I will swiftly deliver you from the ocean of birth and death, from the material realm. And so that's what he says, and I'll read it again. He says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me. Now that was what the question was about. He says, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O Arjuna, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. And that was like a gradation of ways that one could be dedicated or devoted to God. And that gradation is going to come down in a list as we go through this chapter, that in text 8, Krishna says, just fix your mind upon me. Engage all your intelligence in me, and thus you will live in me always without a doubt. But, sometimes we have trouble fixing our mind on God. Our mind is all over the place. I don't have the yogic ability. My mind is distracted and it's always on other things. I can't focus my mind on you. I wish I could. Then Krishna says, well, that's okay. If you can't fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti-yoga, and in this way develop a desire to attain me, right? So, okay, then there's a way to regulate my life where everything's focused on God. If I can't focus my mind on God, I can follow regulations in life which have which will begin to shape my mind that way. And someone would say, well, you know what? I don't really have time to do that, or the desire to do that. What can I do? And then he says, well, if you can't practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfectional stage. So, well, let me do what I do. Arjuna was a warrior, so he became a warrior for Krishna, thinking of Krishna. I'm doing this for you, right? But what if I can't do that? Well, then you can work and give up the fruits of your work to me. Well, what if I can't do that? Well, then you can just work and give up the fruits to a good cause. It's like, take your first step and progress, but it's all leading to mental, with our mind, just like a lover feels for love, for the object of their love. My mind is always absorbed in you. That's where Bhakti Yoga goes. That's where the Bhagavad Gita goes. So
we've met people like that, right? The ashram, we live in an ashram, we live like strict brahmacharis. There's always the guys that came around and they just wanted to render some service. They couldn't live in an ashram. They couldn't really follow the principles well, but they like to clean up, help out, serve out, mop the floor, something so they feel like they're giving something.
Yeah, there's one fascinating part of this chapter is in the commentary what Srila Prabhupada says. He says, if one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. So like, I can't even work and give up the fruits of my work to Krishna. It's like, in the social setting that I'm in, nobody's going to accept that. And then Prabhupada says, for one who has such a problem, it is advised that they sacrifice the accumulated result of their activities for some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there is special work in which the result of one's previous actions may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or to some other social institution, they give up the hard-earned results of their activities. That is also recommended here, because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify their mind gradually. And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. You know what, Raghunath? That relates to what we were talking about earlier.
I know.
Once you're serving with some sense of selflessness, truth becomes revealed to you.
Yeah, actually,
begins to open the door.
And you get tied together.
A lot of time. I'm sorry.
All this is getting tied together.
It all ties together.
You're working in even just giving anything. You're giving something that you worked hard for. That's why I love this path, because there's room for everybody here. Wherever there's a seat for everybody at this table. I can't focus on God my whole time. I'm too busy with my career. I'm attached to just having fun in the material world. There's something for everybody. And that's why that's what ties back to that first question. The Vedic teaching, it wasn't even the first question, it was my introduction to the show, is that there's something for everybody here. Okay, you make a lot of money, you're good at, some people are just good at making money. Okay, you take a little bit of that money and you purify stuff with it. You give it away. Give it away to God. Even if you don't want to give it away to God, give it to some charitable institution that's doing something good with it. And it's purifying the wealth that you have, because you can't spend it on yourself. Do it in a conscious way.
Okay. Because divine love is manifest through selflessness, and, begin to act selflessly, begin to serve, ultimately that service should be focused on the root of all existence. But if it's not at first, then just at least let that selflessness begin to manifest. So let's get right to the essence of the question, which was the phrase in Sanskrit. It is sarvani karmani mayi sannyasa. To sarvani karmani, all of one's actions, mayi sannyasa, renounce them or give them up to me, right? Surrender them unto me. So really, any action that we perform in life, one could ask the fundamental question: who are you doing it for, right? You go to work. Who are you doing it for? Well, I do it for my family. They need me. They need my support. You go to Salvation Army to buy some clothes. Who are you doing it for? You whatever it is, you could ask that question: who am I doing it for? Now, as one is developing Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, one can begin to see that everything that I do, let me do it for the pleasure of God. Everything, and that becomes everything, right? Because, for instance, someone might say, well, okay, I get it. I get when you pick up your beads and chant, or you sit in a kirtan, or you pick up the Srimad Bhagavatam and read it, or you go to your temple and do some service. I can tie that together, that you had activities and you did those activities for God. But what about, you wake up in the morning, you take a shower, you taking a shower for God? You brush your teeth, or you're brushing your teeth for God? And the fact is that when Prabhupada will often use the phrase that, one should think of Krishna 24 hours a day. And the fact is, when I see my body as separately from God, then I'm not doing those things for God. But when I see my body as God's energy, as a tool meant to be engaged in God's service, then it's like, in other words, if my car is God's and I wash it, I just washed God's car, right? And if I see my body as God's body, in other words, it's his energy and it's his property, then whatever I do in maintenance of that body, I conceive of as doing in service of God. Not even artificially, but very directly. And that's called Krishna consciousness. And so here where Krishna's saying, do all your activities, offer them all up to me, that means everything, right? That means, in some ways, it means I may have to refrain from certain activities. And use my time and my energy and my efforts as in ways that are directly offering to God, but as well as everything else. If I'm conceiving everything truthfully, then I'll see everything as the energy of God, and I'll be, in whatever I do, I'll be engaging it for the pleasure of God in all my activities, and that's the yoga that he's describing here. It's not the yoga of wandering away. He was saying that the yoga focusing on the impersonal is very difficult, but you can take every activity that you do, conceive of it truthfully in relation to God, and make that an offering to God.
I was saying this morning in our Sangha, Shama Sundari, who's our hostess at the Sham Ashram here, she's a very qualified, capable lady. And she just chose to invest all her energy, time, and resources in creating an ashram. So people like you and me show up here, other teachers show up here, and she runs regular yoga classes, meditation classes, philosophy classes here year long. And it just consumes one. It becomes her work, her recreation, her family, the people she hangs out with, her social life. And because it's really direct, my point is, as you really refine, like, this is an offering for God, you don't just get that 100% benefit, it starts to change everybody around you. Your direct focus on your spiritual offering has a massive ripple effect of everybody in your universe, everybody in your community, everybody in your family. It's very, very powerful. So as we start saying, okay, I'm going to give a little money here, I'm going to give a little charity there, that's all great things to do. But as you get really, really refined, I'm giving money, and we know people like this, I'm going to give this money to help this project. I'm going to give this money to, or I'm going to actually work at this project more. The more it's really about to do with our mind, to the degree that I'm really focused that this is a spiritual offering, whether it's time, energy, resources, etc. It starts to consume you in a very wonderful way. And then everybody notices. As far as like preaching goes, you don't have to preach. You become a stellar, shining example that people want to become like. And I just know going to this ashram or staying and teaching in this ashram, she's affected us all. She's giving us shelter. Her whole community is inspired. It's quite amazing. And it comes from one person with a very focused, refined choice. And it leaves this beautiful ripple effect of love that it hits everybody. And, you know, we're all touched by it too. So yeah, this is the most wonderful thing we could do for ourselves first, because we got to take care of ourselves, but everybody around us too. And it's really not even just telling people about it. It's like just imbibing this stuff ourselves.
We're Ripple Effects of Love from Toledo, Ohio.
We're a psychedelic band.
Ripple Effects of Love. Beautiful.
Oh, hey, you guys. I got an announcement. Facebook people, check this out. I'm taking a group, maybe Mara, to Nepal. We're hiking through the foothills. Not the foothills. We're hiking in the Himalayas. We're going to on a Purna range. But, you know, it's not like we're like going to Everest. But it's a strong trekking. It's March 13th through the 25th. We're not carrying our packs. We got Sherpas doing that. But it's fun. It's a beautiful time of year to go. If you want to have darshan of the Himalayas, and we're going to do lots of kirtan, join me March 13th through the 25th. You can check my website, www.raghunath.yoga. Also, I want to thank all the Patreon members who support the show. This is a community-sponsored, what do you say, a community-supported podcast. And if you like what we're doing, I want to thank all the people that do support us. And if you'd like to show some support, you can go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages, and that you give a monthly donation for whatever you like. And then that gives you access to an entire Patreon party of uploaded classes on yoga, on Ayurveda, workshops taught by me and Kaustubha, etc., etc. It's like a whole vault of goodies that you can enjoy. And we really have this wonderful community if you're listening to the first time. And man, did you read Ashley? Did you see Kaustubha? Did you see Ashley Rodriguez's husband wrote us this incredible video message?
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, I think it was just for us. That was for like everybody that in any way helped their family. But
we got to make that public. You know, people are going through a hard time here, and we just want you to know we're here for you. We love you. Some people are doing good. If you're doing good right now, I got some news for you. Things get bad. And if you're doing bad, I got some good news for you. Things get good. Things are always shifting in the material world. The weather's changing. The seasons change. And we're trying to find this samadhi. This means the sameness no matter what the external world is throwing at us. Thanks for everybody for joining us. This is how we end the show. We put our hands in the air. We take that namaste and bang it together. And we start to sing and dance. Woo!